Hello, I'm Nancy Stewart. I was the project lead for developing the Birth to Five Matters materials and guidance. And I'm delighted to introduce Sally Cave, who is the head at the Guildford Nursery School and Family Centre. And she's going to share with us their experience of working with Birth to Five to support them in their practice. So over to you, Sally.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And many apologies to those of you who were expecting to see me live on the 8th of November. Obviously, as you probably know, I had to dash off because of Ofsted. So apologies that you've now got a recording of me. I'm going to explain how we're using Birth to Five and why it works for us. And not at all as in we're doing a great job, but actually just to share the practice. But you know your children and your setting, so you are best placed to decide on which non-statutory guidance to use, if any. Principles was our starting point well before any non-statutory guidance came out for this year. And really because frameworks will come and go, but high quality early years education and care does not. And we do stand on the shoulders of giants such as Froebel, Susan Isaacs, Margaret Macmillan, and in our own lifetimes, people like Professor Tina Bruce and Sasha Powell. We do need to be able to articulate our pedagogy and our curriculum and not swing from one idea to another. So as it says on the slide, if you remain true to your principles, your life is so much easier. So a principle, or a value, if you like, is an enduring belief, a belief about how you should accomplish things, a belief about what is important, something that guides your decisions and actions along the path to success. And it's really hard to do anything if you don't know what you believe in, or if you don't believe what you actually say and do. So we started with our own personal values. Why do we do what we do? And why do we do it here, actually? And from there, we debated and agreed on our shared principles. So this is just one principle that guides our work, and there are 7 others, and you'll be able to find them all on our website. And they certainly help with the how and the implementation of our curriculum. And this is another one, and we are unashamedly Froebelian, but the joy for us in that is that Froebelian pedagogy, Froebelian principles is an approach, not a method. So it gives us that freedom to do what we believe is right for our children. And unsurprisingly, we find Birth to Five complements our approach best. Unsurprisingly, really, because the Froebel Trust was one of the 16 groups that make up the Early Years Coalition and who steered the development of Birth to Five. What a lot of some people who are not so much in the know possibly will level at Birth to Five is that it consists of 128 pages. Don't be daunted by that, because, you know, as with most documents, you don't read it in one sitting from cover to cover. So back in July, we as a whole staff explored it in detail. So everybody read the pages 8 to 24, just those. And then in small groups, people read a few pages, about 4, that related to a particular aspect, such as inclusive practice, positive relationships, observation, assessment and planning. And they had time to discuss and consider what we were already doing, what we wanted to change, which was easily done, and that which we wanted to develop longer term. Then those expert groups came back into their class teams and fed back from each of the expert groups and discussed how that worked for them with their age group of children or their group. And this was a really positive way of doing things, as staff were pleasantly surprised at how little needed changing. But actually the document promoted lots of debate and a desire to do more, such as reviewing how we ensure children of same-sex parents feel included, that they belong in Guildford Nursery School and Family Centre. I've included some of these slides just so that you've got them, not for me to actually just go through them, but what you will see is that they are entirely mutually complementary of Birth to Five. Oops. We are very much devoted, if you like, to starting where the learner is, not on an end goal. We have we know where we want the children to be when they leave us, But actually, we have to start with where each child is if we are actually to ensure they make appropriate progress. We look at what each child can do. Some, of course, will need more support for much longer. Some will just need a little bit of support for a short amount of time. Or they might need a different approach to ensure success. But it is about equity, isn't it? It's about giving every child what they need to succeed. The one thing we don't do is talk about deficits or catch-ups. We talk about strengths and building on. Again, this is for you to just to show what we do, what we offer, but I'm not going to actually go through every bit. This is for you to sort of take away if it's of any use to you or not. So we do believe it's really important to co-construct a curriculum with our children based on their interests and fascinations. But we also believe there's much to be gained from children and adults working together on on experiences, activities, if you like, that are age old, that typically adult only, but meaningful, purposeful and enjoyable. So things like gardening, cooking, woodwork, working with clay, block play are all fundamental, aspects of our curriculum. But we do like to think of entitlements, so that, we think of every child is entitled to something. It's, a way of putting it, if you like, that is more in line with what we believe. The ranges in the birth to 5 matters are, I think, particularly useful because you can have a look at where you think a child is, but it actually gives you that sort of what adults can provide and what they can do. So even if you're really experienced but a little bit stuck with a particular group or a child, or if you are totally, new to the EYFS, it's got a wealth of information in there that I think is really accessible and really helpful. So again, this is just showing you what we are offering it through woodwork, and this is a work in progress, and it is so necessary to take your team with you and not to do to them. It's very easy to sit and write curriculum documents in an office, but actually you really have to take your staff with you. This does take time, and we have to all, give ourselves a bit of a break. The revised EYFS, the non-statutory guidance, came out, and we started using it in September this year. So change, or true, deep change, does take time. So bear that in mind. I find this page 38 really, really helpful because, as Tina Bruce has always said, observing, supporting and extending is teaching. There's a lot of noise on social media that implies that we no longer need to observe children. And I think there's a confusion between observing and writing things down, because actually we cannot expect to effectively teach our children unless we really know what they can do now, what they know, and what they understand. So we do need to observe, and we also need time to reflect on what we know about each child so that we can develop their learning. And I think this diagram is very, very helpful. I think there's a real danger of assuming deficits, especially if we reduce assessment to yes/no questions, or yes/no answers, to simple questions. You have to sort of imagine with this, because obviously this photo was taken right at the beginning of this half term, and obviously I had to remove all children's names. So, but it gives you an idea that actually the planning of the curriculum on a day-to-day basis doesn't need to be onerous in any way. This is our observation assessment planning cycle, if you like. Everybody contributes, and it's a working document. Everyone can see it so that you can discuss and reflect, etc. You can spot which children are not being mentioned. You can see that in black, this is children's interests, what they're showing us they're interested in. Obviously, as I said, the names of those children have been removed. In the green, it's the experiences that we give the children, such as sewing and block play, etc. I think the top one is the most important, and it needs to be given time. And I think we found that pairs discussing one child at a time in detail, particularly with the ranges. So we've recently done a staff meeting looking at physical development, actually really considering where we think children are and, you know, where that best fit really. And I think that's, you know, a very helpful thing before we actually use it in any way to track children or anything like that. Actually, it's that professional knowledge and reflection. But you do need to do that in groups with the staff that know those children. I think that professional dialogue is really, really important. We do, and we always have done, writing learning stories. It sounds really grand, but it is actually just writing to the child about what we've seen the child do and their learning and progress. With this term, we've really gone back to using the Every Child a Talker monitoring tool, because we have, you know, like many of you, I'm sure, realised that so many children after lockdown have speech and language, communication and language that's possibly not typically where it needs to be. So we looked at the Every Child a Talker monitoring tool for all our children, and then we were able to identify the ones that needed a really in-depth assessment in communication and language, which is where the Welcome Assessment Toolkit comes in, which is very helpful. And I think that's, again, the joy now of the new guidance, is that we can use all sorts of a range of assessments that best work for our children. The ranges, as I said before, I think are really helpful because of that sort of best fit and the support they then give to practitioners about what to do next, or what they can provide and do. We do think carefully and constantly about workload, and all early years staff are really, really hard workers, and sometimes as a head it's quite hard to actually stop them doing too much work, but they don't mind as long as they see a purpose. All staff, I think, are really hard workers, but understandably resent paperwork that does not appear to serve a purpose. So we always consider who benefits. So does it benefit the child and their learning? Does it benefit the parent in supporting their child's learning and development? Does it support the staff, the practitioners, in extending the children's learning and development? And we would really hope that anything you ask a staff to do does benefit at least two of those groups. And if not, we have to question why we're doing those things. Another one of our principles is the fact that children need knowledgeable and nurturing educators. And so I do believe it's vitally important that we invest in our staff. They are our best and most expensive resource. And so I offer you these websites as a starting point, really. The Birth to 5 document, as with all published documents, is a static group of paper, if you like, and I think the best thing about Birth to 5 is the website. I mean, I like the document as well, don't get me wrong, but the website is constantly being updated and is constantly then it's constantly new, if you like. And so I would urge you to have a look at that. There's always new videos coming on which you can use with staff to support the training. Early education, as a busy leader, you always want to know that if you're going to send staff on to any training or whatever, that it's high quality. And I always know that if you go to early education, you know that you're going to get high quality training for yourselves and staff. And it's now very, very accessible and reasonably priced. I think the Frobel Trust website, the frobel.org, has got a lot of free pamphlets and webinars and research, which I think is really useful. And I think even, you might not wish to identify as Frobelian or anything like that, but if you want to find out a bit about woodwork or cooking, then download one of their free pamphlets. It's really, really helpful. And the Frobel Partnership at the end is our new website. It is in its infancy, but please watch this space. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Sally. That was really interesting and covered so much ground about your thinking and your practice, and not just you, but the team as a whole. And I think that's really valuable to think about how you all work together. I really appreciated you starting with the idea about values and principles, because to my mind, your professional identity and seeing yourself as someone who is skilled and knowledgeable has to start from there. And I thought it was telling that you said birth to five matters complements what you think. It's not telling you what to
Yes.
do, and no one can tell you. So what I'm wondering is, you talked about you as a team developed that. How much do you think there is difference among your staff, or do people take slightly different points of view? How much of a process is it coming to a shared vision about how you work?
Uh, I think you have to give it a lot of time. I would say it was a year's worth of work. So, starting in small groups, September 2020, actually talking about, and I think you have to start with yourselves as well. Why do we do what we do? No one in early years does it for the money. So, thinking about why you do it and what you, and then why you do it in that particular setting or school. So no, I think the whole process of it, actually, we're pretty together. And I think as well, that sort of the culture of, well, if I'm not sure about this, I'll have a chat about it, we'll have a discussion about it. I mean, one of our principles is a Froebelian principle. But what we did, having looked at our own, we then mapped them and how they complemented Froebelian principles as well. So looking at freedom with guidance is something you will hear staff talk about all the time, because there's always that balance, isn't there?
Yes.
And freedom with guidance for us is giving children choices and giving them some control, which we do believe is really, really important. Because, children tend to be quite controlled in their lives, but actually all of us work better, with better well-being and better involvement and better motivation if we feel we've got some control over what we do. That doesn't mean to say it's a complete free-for-all by any means, because the adults have actually decided what they're offering children by the very nature of their environment. But actually, where do you put the guidance? For me, I really struggle personally with climbing trees. As somebody that's scared of heights, and as a child would never have dreamt of going up a tree. We have trees, the children climb them, and my instinct is to go, oh, get down, be careful. Yeah, exactly. So, but we enable them the freedom to climb the trees, but it's that guidance, isn't it, about actually, you do need three limbs connected to the tree, and you need to go as far as you can safely come down. And that's the guidance. And actually, you can see staff teaching children, if a child wants to go up, actually how you do that. Woodwork, you will see, and things change. So woodwork at the beginning of a year, you will see a lot of guidance and not very much freedom. As they become more and more skilled and knowledgeable, you'll see more freedom and less guidance. But whereas possibly mark making, there's a lot of freedom to start with, and as children developmentally get more ready, then there's more guidance in terms of that tripod grip and forming letters, etc. But it's the language it gives us, I think, is a really helpful, and that sort of culture that actually there's no one right way. We debate it, and but we do believe hugely in that children needs choices.
Yes. Yeah, that really comes down to children having freedom and choice, and being in charge ties a lot into the whole characteristics of effective learning. And I imagine when your team kind of reviewed those sections of Birth to Five Matters, where characteristics of effective learning are really central in Birth to Five Matters as an important part of curriculum, that this is something that we want to develop for children. It's not just the areas of learning. So it sounds like you're building that in. The idea of how you give guidance to safely climb a tree, but encouraging that that motivation and persistence to do it, and handling tools safely. I used to think that what we give children is tools to help them to risk assess and to manage for themselves. So tools, but not rules, not
Yes.
don't do it, be careful. So,
But
it
they
sounds like you,
understand as well, with woodwork, it's for children
yes.
and one adult, and that safety goggles are essential.
Yeah, yeah. So it's within the adult is structuring the
Absolutely.
possibilities,
Yes.
but letting
There's
children
some
work within
boundaries with
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
excellent.
And I
Yeah.
think that was the joy when revisiting the characteristics of effective learning in Birth to Five, having done all that
Mm,
work on principles. It's like, yes, this is just like,
this is
and so I
us.
think, yeah, exactly. So July,
Yeah.
when we're looking at a new document, and understandably, staff might be thinking, oh no, another document, another thing we've got to
Mm,
take on board, especially
mm.
after the 18 months we've all had. But actually, it was it was a joyful moment when people are thinking, oh well,
Reaffirming what you already know
absolutely,
and do.
most
Yeah,
reaffirming,
excellent.
but
But
actually,
that's a good process to do, isn't it? To take the time to give yourself that, affirmation that that's where we are and it's going well.
and I think
Um,
the important thing is for everybody to think about the first bits of Birth to Five, not just
mm,
go straight to the ranges.
yeah,
We're just getting into the ranges, really. But I think
good.
that there's so much rich stuff at the beginning.
Mm,
Think
yeah,
about
yeah. And none of it's prescriptive. It is there as an
no,
invitation for you
yeah,
to do exactly as you've done, to think, well, what do we think about this and how do
yes,
we respond to
absolutely.
that? Yeah, great. I'm curious about when you showed your sort of documentation about woodwork, for instance, and I really thought it was interesting that this is what children are entitled to. If we want to give them what they need to go forward successfully and so on, they're entitled to these things. And within each of those activity areas, like woodwork or tree climbing or cooking, you can find, what they're going to get from that. Um, how do you link that to the sort of statutory duty about areas of learning and so on?
Well, we've got what we call sort of curriculum books, actually. And again, this goes back to what I was saying about paperwork. They are sort of A4, and they're all in the nursery because the children use them. So the first 2 pages, literally the first page is linking, say, woodwork to the 7 areas of learning. So the
Right.
educational program, statutory, etc. Then
Mm,
the second side is just the entitlements, etc.
hmm.
Then the rest of it is photos of children doing it. So it might be a little bit of explanation for anybody
Hmm.
that's,
Hmm.
I'm sure, like lots of early years people listening, a lot of agency stuff at the moment because of COVID and all absences, etc. So anybody can have a look. Right, I'm in this area. Right, it's a quick.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
equally, the children like to revisit what they've done and what
Yes.
others have done, and think,
Mm,
oh yeah, so
mhm.
in block play, for instance, oh, I'm going to make that. My friend did that, or I did that last time, or
Mm.
um,
So you're
so that's
constantly renewing those with new photos and things. Yeah.
absolutely. So it's a working document. They're already in their
Mm,
second iteration, and they need to, we're
mm,
working on them. But it's,
mm.
it's a
Yeah. In terms of linking to areas of learning, I think that's a good point that in a way you only need to do that once
yeah, yeah,
for we know how we link through our activities, and you keep that in mind. And I think a lot of what we want children to have opportunities for and they are entitled to are not always directly taught. As you say, they might be guided or supported, and finding when do they need more input depends on what it is, isn't
yeah,
it? So,
absolutely.
if we're very clear in our mind that through these experiences, we can be supporting these things on an ongoing basis. And there are other things like the tripod grip that might need some more direct approach. And it's just being aware of which is which and
Yes.
where you come in. Excellent. Um, one question I had when you were showing the observation, assessment, and planning page, and saying it was very useful to you, again, reaffirming the
Yeah.
way you work.
Yes.
Um, there's the big arrow that says start here on observation. And I was thinking about when I started teaching, 30 plus years ago, we didn't start there. We started with the curriculum. We started with the outcomes. And okay, this is what I'm going to teach. And we had a whole yearly plan that went through a cycle. And it was a revelation to me some years in. And I think it started with Birth to Three Matters, where the philosophy was don't start with your curriculum, start with the child and what you see. And of course, you know, as you say, what children are entitled to, where you're working. But it was a very different thought to me, and really liberating and much more true to child development to look at children first. I'm wondering now, I feel there's a lot of emphasis on have your curriculum and put the progression and exactly which thing you want children to know. What's your thought about that? Do you feel that that is taking us away from starting with children, or how would you fit those side by side or together?
It is a constant sort of consideration, isn't it? You know, you've got your curriculum, you've got your pedagogy, your how, if you like. Your curriculum is your what, but central to it all is the child. So, you know, for instance, we have a core book approach. So we've really looked at, if you're going to, Dear Zoo is one of the books we share with the 2-year-olds, and they know it really, really well, I can assure you. But you can't go straight into reading a book called Dear Zoo unless you've done some of those, you know, sort of the teaching of, you know, what is an elephant. You know, none of the children have been to zoo
one.
any, you know, at the very best. So actually, you know, and they need the language as well, and that's the, you know, so those things you're considering all the time. So I don't know whether that explains you really, but you still have to start with the child. You know, we would like, you know, we've been looking at the ranges and this kind of thing and thinking, well, actually, we would really aim to have all our children leaving for reception really securely in range 5. Really, you know, that's what we've sort of been talking about. And again, as I said, it's a, you know, we haven't, that's not a decision as yet. That's our thinking currently, that's where, so we know where we want them to be. But if they are presenting at a different level, you just still have to start. You can't, you know, it's not effective teaching, is it? You know, it's what, you know, it's that we've got skis zone
say this is the nursery year, so this is what we're going to teach.
No, you just can't, because every child is in a different place. You know, we have a child that will go to school in September, and she has learnt to walk here, but she walks with a walking frame. So, you know, she is not, you know, because of her needs, going to be leaving us at the secure in range 5 and physical development. But my goodness, she's making phenomenal progress. And that's the important thing, really, isn't it?
It is.
And that's not an excuse for not getting every child
to it's realistic. Every child is on their own journey, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yes. And you really
going with them.
I think that's where, you know, assessment and that really, you know, when we look at it as groups of staff, is those children that are not making that progress, that are seemingly stuck, or, you know, and really unpicking those. So, you know, and that's what we've been doing with communication and language, trying to find out exactly where the problem is. Or
and then how do we respond to that and support them to move on?
Yes. Right.
Okay. Well, for you as a nursery, and you've obviously taken on a huge amount in a short amount of time, what would you say is your sort of next area of focus? What are you looking at next? And does Birth to 5 Matters support you in it?
Totally. I think for us, it's really looking at that dilemma around assessment and, you know, reporting progress and all those, that, you know, that's the, it's hard. And we've been looking at lots of different things, and we absolutely are not going down a simple sentence that you just say yes or no to. Because I think it's disingenuous to think that that's not a tick list. Or actually, if you put you know, a few statements together and it's yes or no, then actually it is really in all but name. So and the ranges, I think, are really supportive of that. That, you know, with their overlapping and that best fit, etc. But we're quite comfortable with using the ranges. It's, for me as the head, being able to present to governors and equally to look at a cohort as a whole. So, you know, 170 odd children, you know, actually you want to be able to look at the data like that and think, right, okay, we've got an issue with number. you know, because everybody's not where they should be, or, you know, that kind of thing. Or maybe we've got an issue with that cohort, or, you know, and really unpicking where you've got to do some work with either members of staff or a whole area of learning or whatever. So I think it's finding the right tool for that, whilst staying true to our principles.
Yes, I'm sure you'll be able to do that, and glad if, you know, those ranges help you to generate that kind of summative data that gives you a big picture. Step back and take a look.
And what we've been doing is being able to do that and just record it on the, you know, on a bit of paper, or, you know, on a Word document, but that's not really helpful ongoing. You do need a system.
Yeah, so you want a more electronic way of keeping track of it.
Yes, indeed, yes. Okay. That is not too onerous.
Yes.
Again.
Yes, I really liked your comment about any recording, that essential question, who's going to benefit from this? And when you said at least 2, I thought, oh, that's really good. You know, it's got to really be of use, or else why waste your time and wear yourselves out?
Yeah. If staff ever suggest something that only, or I do, that only is going to benefit one, we really unpick it as to whether it's really, really valuable. But we do look for at least 2. In an ideal world, you'd hit 3.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Sally. I'm sure people will have a lot to think about from what you've shared, and enjoy all the journey ahead with your
Thank you very
staff.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.